So, when you first think about and realize what Rent a Girlfriend is about when you read the plot summary, it does sound pretty interesting, especially in the world of rom-com where everything usually takes place in a high school classroom. So, we're going to put that to the test today. I watched Rent a Girlfriend season 1 about a year ago, and since they're making a third season, I figured I wanted to experiment with review content. Let's come back to Rent a Girlfriend. Let's talk about the first season. What is the good, what is the bad, and what is the ugly of this very, very interesting show? So, the first thing that's going to jump out to you when you watch Rent a Girlfriend is it has a pretty pristine art style. Animation's good, it's smooth, characters are designed well. Overall, very visually pleasing. Effort was put into the syndication animation of the show. This is no surprise because TMS Entertainment is the studio that animated Rent a Girlfriend, produced hit shows such as Dr. Stone, Dr. Stone Stone Wars, Dr. Stone New World, and the club banger Sonic X, among other prestigious productions. Another thing about just the production of the show, I think they casted the voice actors very well for Rent a Girlfriend. Obviously, they know what they're doing, they do a great job. Sometimes when I watch romance anime, I feel like male leads specifically can be kind of cast a little bit wrong. Sometimes I imagine them with different voices in my head, but this one I feel like hits the nail right on the head. Overall, I'm a big fan of the voice acting in this. I think it's one of the best things this show does. And finally, this isn't something that I think about a lot, but a lot of people think that Curry and Kibe have like great depth as supporting characters, and you kind of learn more about them over the course of the series, and they seem to have more dimensions to them to most of the main characters. I can say I haven't put a lot of thought into this, but I can definitely see where they're coming from. I definitely agree. So if you're someone who's a fan of learning more about side and supporting characters, definitely keep your eye out for that if you decide to watch this, because it is pretty interesting. One episode is kind of dedicated to one of the side characters and how they're dealing with some struggles in their own personal life, albeit the conclusion is a little bit disappointing, at least in my eyes, as it does continue to kind of enable some of the bad things that Kazuya does. But other than that, it's cool to see supporting characters getting more action in shows. I'm always a big fan of that. Plot for this show is so flimsy that my hopes and dreams held together by Walmart dental floss are stronger than the plot line for Rent a Girlfriend. I'm not even lying. Within the first 100 seconds, you're introduced to Kazi and his like beaming, gleaming, like three leprechauns with a bunch of fucking rainbows, love life, beautiful girlfriend, super happy, whatever. And then he gets dumped. And that breakup just starts the most ridiculous chain of events in the history of mankind. This is where we get introduced to the female lead of the show, Chizuru, the initial rental girlfriend that Kazuya rents. After their first rental date, he leaves a negative review after researching people who've apparently been her clients. Apparently, she uses a date script or something, and he's not a fan of that. So then he hires her again, gives her more money, even though he thinks the service is a sham, to tell her to her face that her service is a sham. And then grandma collapses, has to go to the hospital. He has to leave the date. What does she do? She follows him. She goes with him. It's good service, I guess. I don't know. But she follows him into this hospital, and what do you know?
Her grandma is there too.
Which again is already a wild enough of a coincidence. So her grandma's obviously going to wonder why she's there, and then
The Kazuya and Chizuru's grandmas are apparently best friends in this nursing home, and they like get along really well, and they talk every day.
so of course they're going to be asking questions about why Chizuru and Kazuya are coming in here, obviously together, and they just manufacture this lie that they're dating, and they tell both the grandparents, and they don't just tell the truth or even make something up that they like just met each other in the waiting room and she was concerned. Honestly, there are way better ways to go about this. and they thought of zero of them. And because of this, for subsequent hospital visits and just life in general, Kazuya elects to draining his savings account, consisting only of money that his parents gave him for living expenses for this. And even more ridiculous things happen over the course of the entire season that I don't want to get into. I want to keep this brief. I want you all to have your own experience with the show. But the one thing I'll let you in on is somehow they're also fucking neighbors. How does this work? I don't get it. They live next to each other. Never discovered this. He never realized this. Did he never leave the apartment? Did he like jump off the balcony to go to school and shit? Like I don't understand. And while we're on the topic of characters, a lot of people, myself and I, do agree to an extent that the characters are admittedly pretty bland, and you don't really discover much, if anything, about them when you watch this show. I shit you not, Kazuya's only documented hobby is researching marine life. And, his grandma also shows up, but really no mention of other family other than his dad for a few frames. Chizuru seems interesting at first. You learn about her and her grandma. You learn about her future career prospects. She wants to become an actress. That's why she has this godforsaken, unfortunate ass job. She considers it practice. It's a way for her to earn money and pay the bills while she's in school. But it pretty much stops there. The only other thing that you learn about her, I'd say, is just like, I don't know, she's a tsundere and she cleans her apartment, which some people in this show don't clean their apartment. There are two other female supporting characters. Ruka, who I guess is a rival to Chizuru, except not really, because Chizuru isn't really doing anything. Show's really slow paced if you haven't been picking up on this by now. And her health condition's interesting. One of the end credits segments kind of goes into a little bit about her past. They don't talk about too much in the episodes, but they do bother to animate it and give some form of context if you don't skip them like I did, and I only realized this when I was researching. And it is an interesting health condition. Her heart rate's very stable. She rarely ever feels excited. But then it gets her into a hot ass mess situation where she feels like she's in love with and insists to be Kazuya's boyfriend because they were in an extremely odd situation and her heart rate raised by like 10 BPM. Zam. And honestly, if I had to pick a favorite character in this show, probably someone I haven't talked about yet, her name is Sumi. She's someone who the female lead Chizuru is kind of coaching in the rental girlfriend and acting sector. She has like some communication issues. She's very silent, doesn't know how to talk well to other people, and Kazuya actually serves a pretty good purpose for her. Kazuya serves as practice to get her to be more social, to get her to be more open and talking. And I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of that dynamic. And then kind of stops there, but it's still a positive character interaction, except Kazuya is fucking cringe as hell. And just, I swear, it's like he only picks like the obviously bad communication options, like when he's playing The Sims and you want the characters to start throwing drinks and shit at each other, except in a more like soap opera drama than real life way. People have considered this show to be a giant endorsement for Rental X services in Japan. Some written reviews on my anime list quote this. I don't really want to give a lot of commentary on this, mainly because I haven't thought about this much before I was writing this review, and I don't necessarily think the media's intentions to advertise this service. Anime have been made in the past to advertise specific products and stuff like that, but I don't think product placement was the main intention of the show. It was definitely advertised and made with a target demographic in mind. People who may find themselves in situations where they'd want to use apps or online dating services like this, maybe on the extreme level, but also just more stuff like people who use dating applications and college and whatever. And it is worth noting that they're definitely trying to paint this service in a really good light, like the best possible light. But yeah, if you want to hear more about this and some more like broader critical thinking opinions, maybe after you've watched the show, go check out this video right here. Helped me a lot with how I wanted to structure my own reviews. Link will be up in the card or in the description below. Now, my final point here, like, Kazuya is shown on multiple occasions to just be way too obsessed with and focused on sexual fantasies. Within the first few minutes of the first episode, this imagery is already presented way too much, and as this series goes on, it only continues. One thing I didn't even notice when watching the series originally was the main end credits animation is just an innuendo to his habit to caress the pipe. Like the entirety of this end credits animation is just it is themed around this. It's not even funny because of how depressing this is anymore. They literally picture him doing this just off frame. It's a clip you've probably seen in other reviews that you've watched of this. No one can avoid talking about this because it's downright pathetic. It's a bold move. Why'd you put this in your fucking show? But other than that, those are like the main things that I personally feel about this show. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Things that I thought were a bit different or that I could provide a unique perspective on compared to other reviews. As I said, like that one I recommended earlier, I'll link some ones that I like down below that you've probably already seen before. And just in consensus, I'd call Rent a Girlfriend the not perfect, not romantic, barely comedy. Because, as I said, it's so slow paced. Patrick's rock in the SpongeBob snail race moves faster than this show. It's the perfect amalgamation of a pretty face and a not so pretty personality. Like as we were talking about, it's produced very well. It looks good, but the inside just really isn't that great. Truthfully, I only watched this last summer to understand why this even existed and how bad it possibly could have been. Truly just a time passer, and oh boy, I never had any idea what I was getting into. And because I learned so much about this, season 2 was already airing at that time. I kept watching it. I wanted to see if they'd ever progress the story, if they'd ever do anything. And soon, within the coming weeks, if you guys like this type of content, I will be reviewing the second season of Rent a Girlfriend.